Awesome. Well, folks, if you could help kind of find a seat and we'll get things going here. So, awesome. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I think got quite a crowd here in the room, so thanks, everybody. Go Bucks. Awesome that you're here. I think we have like 400 people online, too, so that's pretty amazing. Big OH across the room. So we will get things kicked off. Mike Anderson, Enterprise Project Director.
Natalie Sisto-Means, Enterprise Project Co-Director.
We have a pretty packed agenda for you today. We have all of our executive sponsors here today. They are going to join us and have some conversation. We're going to give a quick overview of the testing phase. We'll do some Workday demonstrations. So this is really exciting because you're going to get to see some things in action. We'll talk about training, and then finally we'll wrap up with some Q&A. A little housekeeping before we get started. We're trying something new today for some real-time feedback. So hopefully you saw this when you were coming in. Go to this website on your phone because everybody probably has one out anyway. Check this out. You'll be able to submit some questions. You'll be able to poll the audience. You can one-up each other's questions and kind of vote like, oh, I was thinking that. Let me vote for that one. So get in there and check that one out, and we will try to answer those questions as we wrap up toward the end. All right, so without further ado, I will introduce our executive sponsors. This is our executive sponsors group. You're familiar with all of them. And to kick us off, Provost Bruce McPherson is going to share some words.
We'll see how many slides I advance with this book here, so bear with me. I'll share some words. I was going to share pumpkin pie because of the fall forum thing, and they said, no, just bring your words. So don't get mad at me that there was no pumpkin pie outside. It's actually them. I had your best interests at mind. I knew you'd just eaten lunch and were ready to go. Let me echo a welcome to those here in the auditorium and those following us online, and thanks for joining us. If you were around Central Campus last week, you saw a little activity going on. If you walked across the oval on your way over here today, you actually saw the vestiges of that activity. The poor grounds crew is out there trying to revitalize some of that grass that was underneath those tents for several days. But that was an incredibly significant moment. We brought 850 people together to celebrate the launch of the Time and Change, the Ohio State campaign. Our goal in probably the next 4-ish sorts of years is to reach 1 million donors to the university. That would so far exceed the most engagement with any university in the history of higher education fundraising. That's important because it tells you a little bit about the scope and scale of the things. By the way, we have 500,000 donors already, and we're just announcing the campaign. The good news is we have 500,000 donors. The bad news is they were the easy 500,000 donors. So some work yet to do. But reflecting on the preparation for that campaign launch and thinking about the university's sesquicentennial year really kind of made us think a little bit about the history of this university. We wouldn't be here today without a consistent commitment to change. Sometimes little bitty changes, sometimes really big, audacious, frightening changes. But we're 150 years old. We've made them over and over and over again. Sometimes we made them in really difficult times. The president and I went down to former President Jennings' memorial service a few weeks ago. He led the university some decades ago, and he came in right at the time that the state had really drastically cut funding for higher education, and particularly Ohio State. Imagine the changes we had to go through in the face of a complete erosion of the business model that supports you. We've weathered a lot of really significant times. And not only have we weathered it, we've actually come out at a different plane every time. This is a place that actually leads higher education. This is a place that other institutions watch. We'll have a little update a bit later on some of the elements around the student product in the enterprise project in Workday. I was with my peers from the Association of American Universities, the AAU, 62 of the nation. They're all the universities you would think to name, the big places, the really high-profile places. And they wanted to hear what Ohio State was doing in this space because they were aware that we had a wrinkle and we were having to figure out in real time how to address that wrinkle. It's the same with all of the stuff they do. Other people are watching what we do. You know, we look out at peers as well, but the world is watching the Ohio State University. This is a place that actually makes a difference. We look at opportunity, we get out ahead of it, and we try to tackle that change head on and drive the change rather than have to react to the change. You know, we're guided by a strategic plan. You know, we've talked about this with this audience before. You've heard a lot about teaching and learning. You've heard a lot about access, affordability, and excellence. We're talking very, very actively this year about research and creative expression. Our academic healthcare pillar of our strategic plan is something that is built around a national leading academic health center. We have assets here that no other universities in the nation actually have. These are all really great aspirational things that we work on. We can only really do them if we also attend to the fifth pillar in the strategic plan, which is around operational excellence and resource stewardship. If we're not our best selves in how we operate, then we don't have the ability to accomplish all of those other things that really make this university unique. And the Enterprise Project is one of the fundamental components of that fifth pillar, of really creating an environment for us and for the people who follow us eventually to have a state-of-the-art ability to do the business we need to do as a university. And so what we're talking about here today is part and parcel of lifting up the entire university. You know, we do not succeed with all of those other elements that we aspire to do without being our best selves around how we operate and the way that we operate. But it's a lot of change at a complex place, and we understand that. You know, just one example that keeps coming back to me is, you know, part of this implementation is thinking about how we do things now, right? So doing the inventory of what goes away or what actually fits in, it has to be integrated with Workday when it's implemented. We found 600 things, 600 systems. Now, we all knew that it would be a big number, but I think most of us actually were astonished that the number was that big. You know, these are all solutions that we've created different times through time, through the history of this organization, to make sure that we proceed. That's a lot of stuff to have to change, and many in the room have been front and center with creating that change. But we have to change. We have to be committed to this. We have to actually drive it forward. We have to lean into this as a team. Just 2 weeks ago, we had our third annual Academic Leaders Forum. I actually bring all of the department chairs, the school directors, the deans, the vice provosts together for a day off campus every year to talk about leadership. Because all of those leaders none of them were trained to actually be leaders. You know, I'm trained to be an entomologist. Why am I talking to you about an enterprise project? You've probably been asking yourself that question. I could read some of your body language. I just thought I'd put it out there from me so it's a little less tense around the room. But the fact is, with that group, part of what we talked about this year as a critical element of being an excellent leader is to talk about change and adapting to change and driving change. You know, it's so much more powerful to be in the driver's seat than just riding along. And that's what we've committed to. And yet it's just as frightening as all get out. And so what we need all of you to do is be part of this change. We need you to lean into this hard. You know, we're in final stages running towards implementation of the bulk of what we're going to accomplish. And it's going to be tough, and we're going to discover some things that we should have thought of before. We're going to discover some things that we never knew we would have thought of. We're going to figure out how we articulate across a very complex set of organizations. We've talked about this a lot with the medical center operations and the university. Very, very different beasts, and yet all one beast. And so how do you align these things, and where does it make sense to actually have parallel versus exactly the same? And those are all difficult questions to operationalize, and that's right where we are, is moving those toward success. But here's the other thing. When you have change, you have to commit to asking questions, to hearing the question you're asked, and to answering those questions. I know we send out a lot of information. I worry sometimes we send out the answers that we have without knowing the questions you have. And so days like today are really designed to close that gap, to actually let us find a place where we truly are listening to the questions you have, so that the answers we provide can be to your questions. There are things that we will need to continue to tell the community broadly, but there's an awful lot of work we need to do to make sure that when you, who are in the front lines of making these things happen, actually have a particular question, that we're hearing it and answering it. And the executive sponsor group is committed to that. Our project team throughout, this is one of the core principles that we're driving through that conversation, that we need to genuinely listen to what your concerns are, what your ideas are, and we need to react to those as well as the other information. So I would just close by saying what I said at the start, and that's to thank you for being here. This happens because of you. I realize there are days you think it happens to you. That's not an inaccurate statement, but it happens to you because of the roles that you play, because you're involved in making it happen, or you're a user who's going to rely on the experiences that we develop through this system. And so know how appreciative we are of the fact that you come together to learn more, that you're engaged, that you're committed to actually making this all a success. We'll get there together. I said this the other night at the campaign launch. We've all come to this room through different pathways, but the thing that's brought us together is that we're Buckeyes, and we don't know exactly where the road leads, but we do know that we'll travel together as Buckeyes. And so we've got this, folks. We've got this. Some assembly required, but just know that we've got this. Let me turn it over now to Mike Hoffer, who will give you a big picture of where we are in the timeline of this whole thing.
Hi, I'm Mike Hoffer. I'm not an entomologist. I work for one, though, so that's good. So the best thing about working for an entomologist is when your children find bugs, you can take pictures of them, and then he can identify them for you. And he's very good at it. Like one picture, and he's like, "That's a so-and-so bug. Don't kill it. It's good." Anyway, I want to take just a quick audience poll. I've been here at Ohio State for almost just over 9 years now. So who's been here that long or longer? Wow, that's a lot, right? So I want to emphasize this isn't the first change we've all been through, right? We've all been through large enterprise changes before. We've done upgrades to PeopleSoft that were huge. The Med Center has done, where's Phyllis? I know I saw her walk in there. She is, hi Phyllis. Done huge changes to their electronic medical record systems, phone systems. We've done changes to phone systems, learning management systems, where every faculty had to change their course. We changed from quarters to semesters, right, in that period of time. So we do this all the time. And it's on it's made possible by all the folks like you in this room, and how you deal with that change and take those change messages forward. And we're taking all the lessons that we've learned from those past changes and applying them to the enterprise project, including this laser-focused approach to helping folks through this big change. So again, I think to reiterate what Bruce said, updates and demonstrations like today are just one event or a series of events to help guide us through that change. So I want to give you a little bit of a project status about where we are, and where we've been and how we've got here. So we are just entering the testing phase, as you could see right there up on that slide, and getting ever closer to go live in the summer. The project status is yellow, and I think people see that and they're nervous, and it's yellow for a good reason, right? It's yellow because it is rich with complexity and risk, right? It's not yellow because we're behind schedule or over budget. And those are two very key messages, right? We're on time and we're actually under budget at this point today, right? That wasn't squishing a bug. That was knocking on wood. And we're 1,000% committed to doing everything necessary to provide the team with what they need to be successful. We're in the process of moving some teams around, and I think those moves happen next week. To finalize those moves of moving HR individuals over to Mount Hall, and then I'm moving some of my Mount Hall team over to TNC so that everyone is co-located for this testing phase. I feel good about our status. I feel really good about where we're at. I met with Kevin yesterday, and we had a good meeting. I met with Anderson the day before, and I feel like we're on track to enter the testing phase and complete that successfully. I wanted to give you another quick update on the Ray. And our key message here is that we need to start to look at data as a university asset and one of our most important assets, and how we protect that asset and how people access that asset is really critical. We're setting the foundations for those data and analytics right now. We're fine-tuning it. We're in a great position to move it university-wide in the very near future. We launched that Ray over the summer, and the big change that we've really implemented is instead of people going in, grabbing that data, or us sending that data across campus, we send terabytes of data across campus every day to ourselves. Not secure, time-consuming, a lot of strain on our network, right? Our big change is we're going to keep that data in one place. We're going to give you a set of tools that lay over that top of that data, and you'll be able to come into that data array and access those tools to get to the data to do your job. So a new reporting environment is here. We're ready to roll it out, and again, securely blending the data from multiple places, again, to conduct that business. So we're excited about that, and it sets up the future for Workday and for us to be able to make better data-driven decisions across the university. So we're going to come back at the end for some questions, but right now I'm going to kick it over to Mr. Mark Larimore to talk about the health sciences and the Wexner Medical Center.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I know it's after lunch, but so Mark Larimore, CFO of the Med Center. I also don't deal with bugs. And at the Med Center, we try to not have any bugs, whether they're Bruce's type or any human-acquired bugs. So there. So I'm here. I got a couple slides to talk about alignment, and we talk a lot about alignment day to day, and whether it's at the Med Center or it's at the university as a whole. So I think this project challenged our alignment on how we bring things together. At university basis, how well all the business units function on a day-to-day basis and understand what happens at each of those various business units is important. And as people start to understand how the business functions, you start to see alignment come together. At the Med Center, we've got 7 health science colleges, we've got a physician practice, and we've got 7 hospitals. So those business units, if you want to call them, how well they understand our goals and our mission, and then what it's going to take to get there, whether it's implementing new tools like this, or just changes in protocols and such like that. It plays into how successful we're going to be and how well we end up being ranked from many fronts, whether it's on the academic side or on the rankings in the hospital. So a couple slides. You can get them to go. So 2 pictures, of course. This is okay, I think the good slide I had was the James, but these are our hospitals, in case you didn't know them. So those of you who've been focused on the campus side, and I think we all know the Oval on there. But I think there were, as we went through this process, and you know, when Bruce said there was 800 things to change, I was thinking it was like 8,000. But I think there are places where we've been able to create alignment. So I think as we look through the process and what our deliverables are on this project, certainly from an HR standpoint, anyone that's looking for a new job or looking to change jobs that they're here, having one system to do that. When it comes to vendors, you'd never guess that we have thousands of vendors and we add hundreds of vendors every year, and how we add them is a little different, but creating a single database where we have all our vendors in there, and although we try to operate as one big purchasing center, we're not quite there, so letting everyone have the ability to go in and access those and participate in the contracts across the entire university. This system will allow us to align on that front. I think there are things that happen at the Med Center that don't happen at the rest of the university, and that's today. I mean, some of these, maybe down the road, we will look to use them across the whole university. So position control is one. The Med Center budgets, as you know, on a per head basis. And so it's a huge piece of our cost that we need to control. And we have that today. So it's been a challenge through this process. And so I don't think I've quite convinced Mike to do that across the whole university, but I'm holding out hope on that one. And then we have a lot of licensure and certification data that has to be kept, so that's a little unique. And then how we track time. So a lot of our employees clock in and clock out and actually have a schedule that's in there that they work. So, and that's different than it is on campus. So as much as, you know, I think in the early days it was, if we make it through Workday and we're successful, everything will be the same. It's some of it will be and some of it won't. So I think if you look at wins, I think it'll be nice to have all our financial data together in a way that's easier to access and drill down into when we're searching for information. I think aligning HR, finance, and supply chain in one system will be nice. And then I think, you know, I spoke about the HR side. So the onboarding, to the extent that that's all electronic and no paper, and we make it easier for people to enter Ohio State will be great. So I think, you know, circle all the way back is the alignment piece of it. I think when I look back at it, I think we had a lot of challenges to start with, and I think that we've made great progress. I think early days when we looked at all of the blockers that we had with Workday, Workday's been a good partner with us to get through some of those. Did we get through all of them? Not yet, but I'm confident that we will. And I think maybe you think about every now and then, like how do we come out of this project more aligned than we went into it? I think we'll be successful and we'll have a good story to tell to the board once we announce we're done, which will be a couple of years from now being totally done, right, Beth? Right. So, anyways, so I get to punt to Beth Hume. We're debating whether I said back to you, Beth, or whatever, but Beth's going to talk to you about student. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. And just for the record, I'm not an entomologist either. So as you may know, you probably know, over the summer we decided to pause our current implementation of Workday Student. This decision was based on the work that we'd been doing with Workday to gain a better understanding of product development and alignment with our implementation goals. Now, it was big news when Ohio State signed on to work with Workday Student. The product was still in development, but we knew and we continue to believe that it is the right product for our students. You know, at Ohio State, we don't shy away from challenges. Right? We take risks and we push boundaries, and this is an example of where we're doing that. But I want you to know that the pause period will not impact our implementation of finance, of supply chain, HR, and payroll. These are all on schedule. And I also want to emphasize that we are committed to implementing Workday Student in the future, and we have agreed on a revised implementation schedule with Workday. And I'll show you that in just a minute, but before I do, I just want to give a special thanks to the Workday Student team and campus partners who dedicated many months working on this. This group has been nothing short of extraordinary. They've been faced with many challenges along the way, but have been tremendous partners with us and have faced all these challenges with incredible attitude and professionalism. And I'd just like to call out and thank them. So, let's see if I can, there we go. All right, so this is a visual representation of the updated Workday student timeline. If you look at the ones there and the asterisks, so the ones are next summer's Workday releases, and they remain unchanged, as I alluded to, as well as future functionality releases for finance and HR. There's also some foundational student aspects that go live next summer as well. These include our academic structure in Workday, such as colleges, departments, and schools, as well as academic calendars for hiring and paying faculty and student workers, and integrations with the Bursar's Office for Student Financial Accounting. Now, if you look at the 2 through 5, these are the Workday student implementations, and you'll see that the release schedule has shifted by 2 years. It's been extended by 2 years. This decision was made after much discussion and deliberation. It means that Workday student implementation will begin in 2023 and 24 academic year. But we're going to continue to be engaged with Workday. We want to ensure that Workday continues to progress in product development. And so we will be engaged and we'll be conducting checkpoints every 6 months to review the system and confirm that they're heading in the right direction for us at Ohio State. In the meantime, we're going to continue to use PeopleSoft, Student Information System, so the services to students and our student services employees won't change. Now, detailed project plan is currently being developed, and we will be sharing that with you when we know it. And there'll be time for questions afterwards. So at this point, I am going to hand it over to Susan.
Thank you, Beth. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not going to make any bug jokes. But to better position the Office of Human Resources, including the Medical Center HR and all of our HR professionals, to support the university's aspiration to be a leading national flagship public university, our focus through 2023 is on 3 strategic initiatives and 5 foundational themes. The strategic areas of focus, which are talent management, HR excellence, and total rewards, are important to achieving the academic, research, teaching, medical, and professional needs outlined in our Time and Change strategic plan. The efforts to strengthen foundational disciplines of change management, communication, compliance, risk management, culture, and diversity and inclusion provide the building blocks for a human resources organization that benefits not only HR professionals, but all employees of the university. Today, I want to focus in on HR excellence because that is where our HR service delivery project squarely is aligned. Before I dive in here, I want to recognize that for many of you, this may look very familiar, but for some of you, this may be new information. The HR service delivery model has been designed with the feedback, input, and support of many individuals throughout the HR community to ensure a model that will enhance HR services while continuing to support the needs of the community. Working closely with units and departments, HR business partners and consultants on the left support one another to deliver services based on the needs of the individual area, supported by the processes and procedures developed by centers of expertise and HR leadership. Providing consistent services to the entire community, centers of expertise and HR services teams on the right will deliver HR across the university and medical center in a shared capacity. The entire model will be enabled through implementation of technology that will empower our HR professionals with the right tools, data, analytics, and reporting to effectively do their jobs. The HR business partner, HR consultant, and talent acquisition consultants will be co-located and sit within the business. You may be wondering, as a faculty or staff member, how will you get HR services in the new model? Starting next summer, everyone will have access to Workday. In Workday, you will be able to conduct many HR tasks, such as view your pay slip, update your personal information, update your benefits, and make requests for leave. If you have HR questions or needs that can't be met through Workday, HR Connection, our new HR Shared Services Center, will be just a phone call away. HR Connection is there to provide you with effective, efficient, and consistent service. When needed, HR Connection can quickly connect you to an HR specialist so that we best support you in those moments that matter. HR business partners and HR consultants, both located in your college and unit, support one another to deliver services based on the needs of the individual college or unit. HR business partners will work closely with your unit leaders to drive talent priorities and strategic HR support for your unit. HR consultants will deliver college or unit-specific support to managers, supervisors, faculty, and staff by once again focusing on those key moments that matter. Human Resources kicked off a pilot implementation of HR Connection, the Shared Service Center, this summer. The HR Connection team has been working through new processes and systems that will be utilized across the university next year. I really want to thank the pilot team for their incredible work. They've logged more than 17,000 cases in a new HR case management tool, which will track timely resolution to your HR requests. Informal satisfaction surveys have been very positive. As many of you have heard, we are beginning this transition to the new HR service delivery model this January. Starting this fall, college and unit leaders will have their initial conversations with their HR business partners on what that role looks like and what will the work with the college or unit be. Later this fall, change coordinators will be hosting sessions for faculty and staff to share what is changing and how they will be impacted. As we get closer to the transition, college and unit coordinators will work with the HR business partners to support the change with a January goal of faculty and staff knowing how to get HR support in the new model. I'll be happy to answer questions when we get up in the panel, and at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the last of our three mics, Mike Papadakis.
Thank you, Susan. So I thought I would spend a minute highlighting a few of the things from a finance perspective that I'm excited about going forward. Obviously, there's lots of things we could highlight. We've picked a few things today to focus on. So as I think about going live on Workday next summer, there's a whole series of things from our standpoint that are gonna change for the better. I think a couple of those from a financial processes reporting standpoint to highlight. From a customer account standpoint, for the first time ever to have across the entire enterprise one system for customer accounts, which is something we've never actually had before as a institution. To have a new PI portal that is actually linked within Workday from a grant standpoint. And then to have consistent and accurate financial information that everyone has access to. I think when we first started this process, one of the things that was the most exciting to me was the concept of the democratization of information, which really means that everyone at the institution who needs to have correct and accurate data can get it on the fly and actually use that data to make decisions. I think those of you know today we do spend a ton of time just gathering data to actually make strategic decisions. In addition to what's going to be actually happening within Workday, there's also a number of other enterprise-wide systems that we're also going to benefit from as part of this process. Again, we've highlighted a couple of those here. One of those is eBuilder that we've already gone live on, and I see a number of folks in the room who are already using eBuilder. I think it's already changing the way we think about construction project management. And then Nelnet, which is going to be our new e-commerce platform. So we have one consistent way, again, across the entire enterprise to do business across the internet and actually collect and receive payments. I also wanted to highlight a couple of things going on from a policy feedback perspective, maybe not the most exciting topic, but one that we definitely need to focus a little bit of attention on. You've probably seen a lot of the policy emails going out, and I think one of the interesting elements of doing this enterprise-wide project is that it's given us the opportunity to really rethink a lot of the university policies, because really this project touches almost every single policy that the university has in existence. And so we've highlighted here a number of policies that are going to be coming forward for comment this fall, a number of policies this month in November and December, and we would just encourage everyone to be an active participant in that process. We actually do listen to feedback. We actually do take that into account as we do edit policies as we go through the policy revision process. Also, if you want to get a really good view of all the policies that are impacted, we would, of course, encourage you to go to the website here, policies.osu.edu, to get a sense of all the policies impacted across HR, finance, payroll, supply chain, and student across the enterprise. Last but not least, as the last executive sponsor to step on stage, we thought it was important to obviously thank the team for all of the hard work that's gone into this to date. As you can see from our screen here, lots of different groups, lots of different individuals, lots of time and commitment has gone into this to get us to this point. I know many of you are doing your day job and are doing your enterprise job, and just know that we as a executive sponsor group absolutely appreciate all the hard work and effort that's gone into it. And I hope that you would maybe join me in a quick round of applause for all of us for all the work that's gotten us here. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it to Mike Anderson to continue the show. Thank you.
All right, thank you to our executive sponsors, and I can't help it, I'm going to make a bug joke, because as we start testing, and I'm glad the provost is not with us anymore, our job is to squash the bugs. We want to end the bugs here. So a quick update on our testing schedule. As you'll see, we mentioned end-to-end testing is going to start actually in earnest about just 6 days from today. So very exciting that the team's going to be kicking off the end-to-end cycle 1. You'll see that we have a couple different end-to-end cycles, and we put up here that subject matter experts are likely to be included in system testing this time, or end-to-end testing, which is a little bit different approach than what we've taken before. End-to-end testing really is not just looking at a process within Workday, but looking at it from end to end. Does a process start outside of the system? Does it start in another system? When we talk about integration with the medical center, we might start a process in Kronos that's going to fly into Workday and ultimately into our reporting and analytics environment. So we're going to be testing processes from start to finish. End-to-end testing is normally done, or historically done here, kind of by the project team alone. So we're pretty excited to be able to invite other users into the end-to-end cycle 2 to get your hands on keys a little bit sooner. I think that's one of the benefits of moving to an application like this. Once we got our data in there, it's something that you'll have the opportunity to kind of see it come to life at this point in time. A couple other of the testing, testing cycles that we're going to be having. Payroll parallel test. Obviously, we talked about a lot of the business changes that are going on. So as a testing PM, having come up through the ranks here doing testing, the word payroll parallel always kind of gives me a little bit of pause. We obviously have to get payroll right. We want to be able to explain any difference that's going to be coming out of the payroll testing. So when we talk about payroll parallel, it's not going to be a match one-for-one. So we need to be able to explain what changes happened and why there's any difference. Again, with the significant amount of business process transformation and changes that are happening, it's not going to be a one-to-one match. So we need to be able to explain that. As we move into preparation for go live, we'll start doing user acceptance testing, and this is really where we'll start inviting even more of the user community into the process to do testing with us. This is really going to be a subset of the tests that we've run so far, and a great opportunity to really demo the system and get your hands on it and make sure it's going to work in an environment that, you're the experts, you're the users of the system. We want to make sure it works in an environment to support your business needs. So again, we'll be bringing staff and faculty into the mix there to be able to help us do that testing effort. All right, the next topic we're going to touch on quickly is our Workday deployment. So we've been talking about going live with Workday, and that's going to happen over the summer. So when we go live with Workday, it's actually going to happen in 2 steps. And this is probably the first time that a lot of people have heard this. Like, wait, you're going live in the summer. That's so exciting. You're going to be going live in 2 steps. And really the purpose of this is to minimize the downtime for step 2. So step 1 is going to be our Workday HR and payroll. So when we go live at the end of June for HR and payroll, that's really going to be there to support the time tracking for our hourly employees that need to be able to submit time for the last 2 weeks of that I guess it's really the first 2 weeks of the pay cycle that's going to happen when we switch over our fiscal year. So we're going to go live end of June. HR and payroll will be up and running. In July, after the switch over to the fiscal year, and so we can take advantage of that lovely holiday weekend that we're going to have, we're going to look for the opportunity to move finance and supply chain into production. And when we do that, the goal again is to minimize the disruption, minimize the downtime that we're going to have. Obviously, we know in the supply chain space how critical of a function that is for our medical center. Again, we want to minimize disruption and really get ourselves live over that holiday weekend and make sure we're back up and running to do business on that Monday. Let's see, any other details when I hit on those. That's kind of the main topics. Then as we continue to go live there, we'll be integrating with the student information system, which is PeopleSoft right now. So at this point, we will integrate, and that'll be part of our testing as well. We'll remain in that space until we go live on Workday Student. So without further ado, I think this will be one of the more exciting things that we're going to do today, short of squashing bugs. We'll do some Workday demonstrations. So I think, let's see, Bonnie's going to come up and kind of facilitate this for us. All right, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bonnie Benson. I am the Organizational Change Management Director for the program. So we're going to transition now to a part of this session where we're actually going to give you a look inside the system into some pieces that you will frequently use as end users. So I'm going to invite Crystal and Dave up, and what they're going to show you is they're going to show you a little bit about how to put an absence request in Workday, and they're going to show you one of our dashboards. So I know Crystal has to get set up here in the system, so I'm going to invite her over so she can get logged in. But I'm excited for this because I've been monitoring the questions, and while the first question that's probably the most interesting, or the one that has the most votes, is what did you have for lunch? The second one is, when are you going to show us some things that are real? And so I'm excited today that this is real. And so this is what our Ohio State configuration is going to look like and feel like. And so Crystal and Dave are going to walk you through what that looks like and some of the changes that you'll experience. So Dave, do you want to come on over, and I'll leave it to you. Okay, sure. Excuse me. Traffic jam. Excuse me.
Oh, it's about to get really real.
So real.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, leaves of absence. And we're going to show you a little bit about how Workday looks, what it feels like. Crystal's going to start off by just showing us the homepage and some basic functions. Then we're going to show you how to, at a very high level, request a leave, what it looks like to request a leave, what it looks like on a calendar, and really about the wins that Workday provides us as we all try to navigate what are sometimes the most difficult points in our lives, which is when we need to be away from this beautiful, beautiful place. So Crystal's going to start off and show you a little bit of the homepage, and then I'm going to take over and narrate from there.
And before I get started, I do have, oh my gosh, I'm so short. I do have a few disclaimers that I need to just put out there. The first is that these demonstrations are in a development and testing environment. So all that means is that when you guys get into the system, when we go live next summer, it may just look a little bit different. And that's going to come from testing, refining design, etc. The second thing is that I'm going to be using a functionality called proxy. Also, if I'm talking too fast, just like throw something at me, because, yeah, thank you. Okay. So proxy. Proxy essentially allows me to log in as another user and see the system from their point of view. So we get to do a lot of testing with that. Now, this is only available in testing environments and won't exist in production when we go live and when you all are in there. And then third, I'm going to be using a lot of new terminology that does not make any sense to you, that you're not familiar with. I'm going to do my best to explain what everything means, what I'm clicking on as I go through. But the main thing to remember is that you will all receive the training that you need for when you get into the system. So don't get overwhelmed just yet. This is just our first run through. All right. Okay. So the first thing that I want to show on the home page is just the search bar here. Now, I mentioned that I use a feature called proxy for these demos, and the task that I need to search for that is start proxy. One of the things that I like about Workday, because I'm really lazy, is that it does partial searches. So that means all I have to do is type in 2 letters of a word or string of words, and then it will just go ahead and search for me. So you can see it pulls up everything that I need just by typing in ST and PR, and I see right in my list start proxy right there. And this doesn't only work in the top search bar, it works in any field that you could search in. So for example, here, if I type in Joe and Trib, it gives us our demo employee, Joey Tribbiani. Yes, thank you. All right, good. Glad everyone got that. That was Dave's idea, by the way. Okay. Press OK. All right. So we can see once Joey logs in, he gets a very similar view to what I had. Everyone has these options at the top as well as applications below. And I'm going to go through each one by one so you know what I'm talking about as I refer to them. So we had our search bar. We have a bell up here that indicates notifications. The box next to it is for your inbox, so this is where any tasks go that you'll need to take action on. Both of these I'm going to show later in the demo, so let's not worry about these right now. And then after that, you can go to your worker profile. And this is essentially your employee self-service view of Workday, where you go and view your paychecks. You can request your absences from here, whatever you need to do. And then, of course, our block O takes us right back home. All right. Applications are going to populate based on your security, your access, your role and job function in Workday. So it's generally going to be your most commonly used tasks based on whatever it is that you do, or some of your favorites that you may have saved in the system. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the absence worklet, and Dave will take over while I drive.
I'm going to talk and try not to stand in front of the screen. So we're going to, as Crystal said, talk about the absence worklet. The biggest learning curve here, I'm going to punch you right at the beginning, is the idea under Workday absence of time offs and leaves. I'm going to repeat it a number of times in this very short demo, but I want you all to start getting use of time offs and leaves. A time off in Workday speak is your short term, I need a vacation day, I need to take a couple hours for a dental appointment. They don't require any approval from the HR Connection Service Center. A leave is intended to be a longer time away from work. So think of your FMLA leaves, your maternity leaves. They, in Workday, require an employee to be returned from a leave, where a time off does not. So it's important for everybody to remember this idea of time offs and leaves. A time off is just a 1 day, 2 day, a week vacation. A quick needs to be approved by my manager. A leave is something that needs more formal approval, and it also, a worker needs to be returned from a leave, which is an entire another business process. I want to start by saying we're going to show you a very basic FMLA leave here just to demo the system. We are not going to talk about any other leaves like faculty professional leave or time offs in a way that will really go into the weeds about how you go in there and make those choices. So I'm going to throw it over to Crystal, who is going to show us how to, as an employee, initiate a leave in Workday. I do want to point out that while there are some differences between the Med Center and campus, Workday Leaves is one area that will be available for all employees. So whenever anybody requests a leave, that's a long-term FMLA leave, whether they're an employee at the medical center or on campus, they're going to go to Workday to make that request. Think of Workday as another input. Today, you might email somebody, email your leave administrator. You might call HR and request your FML. Tomorrow, you're going to go to Workday to make those decisions, make those choices, which then will route to the leave administrator to be processed.
So before I jump in there, I want to do a quick overview of what you have on your absence calendar. Now, Workday calls this the integrated absence calendar because it has your time offs and leaves all in one place. So you get a holistic view of everything happening with your absence management. Over to the side here, one of my favorite features, so I just have to show you real quick, is a balances display. And you'll notice up at the top there's a field for balance as of and then a date. So what this allows you to do is get a projection or an estimation of what your balance will be at a point in time based on what the system expects you to accrue, as well as any time offs you may have in the system at that point. So if you'll see, right now we have 89 hours of vacation. Can people see that? Is it tiny? It's good? Okay. Well, we're gonna go with it for now. Okay, so we have 89 hours of vacation. If I go out here and just select out to the end of October, that 89 hours is going to update after just a second of processing to let me know how much I should have at that point in time. So no more crazy spreadsheets if you're weird like me. Hopefully that will really help you project out those balances for you. Okay, so now I'm gonna jump into this leave request, and we'll say that Joey was out for surgery this past week where he has this family and medical leave and sick time off happening in conjunction with one another. So you can see the green check marks next to them mean that they are approved. Those business processes have successfully been completed. Now, if we go across here, we can see what it looks like when it hasn't been successfully completed. Let's say he needs to go out and he needs to request intermittent family and medical leave for physical therapy to recover from that surgery that he had. So if I go over here, again, my search functionality lets me go ahead and just type in a few letters, and it'll populate all of my options that I am eligible for. So if I click on intermittent right here and just go to the next page, I have my request page here. It gives me some information up at the top. And then it takes the dates that I dragged across the calendar. So that's all already populated for me. Any fields with red stars mean that they're required. So I'm gonna go ahead and select my reason here. And then I'm just gonna submit this. So you see on the calendar now, on the bottom, as opposed to the green check marks we see at the top, we have a grayed out leave request, meaning that it's in progress. So employees know the status of what's happening with the items that they have requested. If Joey decides to go in here and see where it is at in the process, he can go and click on the absence request, drill down to the process tab, and then he gets an idea of where it is, who it's waiting on, and when it should be expected to be completed, which is a much wider view than what we have today. At this point in time, I'm gonna go ahead and proxy in as one of these absence partners here who this approval is waiting on so that you can see what an approval looks like in Workday.
While Crystal does her proxying, I'm going to talk about a couple wins. One, visibility. The employee can see everything that's going on their absence calendar. They can see all of their requests. They can see what the status of their request is. They can see when their request is approved, when it's pending. Two, their supervisor or whoever has access to be able to see their employees' calendars will be able to see the same thing. They'll be able to see that their employee made a request for that leave is pending, and when that leave is approved, this all happens in real time. The balances are there and updated in real time. Those projections take into account things like, I've used so much FML, but I'm gonna gain a couple FML days back, and it all happens in real time. That's something that does not exist today. I also, as we proxy in as the leave administrator or absence partner, I also want to explain that what doesn't change now or in the future is what I'm going to call the back end of this process. So many of these leaves, the entitlement of FML, leave as an accommodation under the ADA, really compel us to look at each of these requests individually and to review all the paperwork. All of that stays the same. The leave request is going to go to HR Connections just like it does today. It's going to be processed and reviewed by a leave administrator, and when that leave is approved, it will be approved in real time and there for the employee to see and for the manager and supervisor to see. No more emailing approvals back and forth in Outlook. everything happens in real time, and the visibility here is a huge win.
Agreed. Yes. Yes. Co-sign that. Okay. All right. So I'm in as the absence partner now. His name is Alex Garrett for the sake of this demo. It's not a real person. I grabbed that from the show Joey. Anyone watch that? No? Okay. I don't either. So all of this all of the information that Joey requested for his leave of absence now appears right here in Alex's inbox again in real time, just like Dave was saying. He can go ahead and take action directly from his inbox, which again is this little button up here that has the 18 by it. And he's just going to go ahead and approve it. The approve button takes him to a successfully completed screen, which lets him know that everything is good to go, doesn't require any other action on anyone else's part, and Joey's leave request has been approved. Now, in terms of visibility, like Dave was mentioning, Joey's manager, Rachel, also has this view into her employees so that she knows what's happening with them. She can go to one place and see all of these items. So the first thing I'm going to show very briefly is just the notification, which Joey also receives, but it lets her know this family medical leave request has been approved on her employee's behalf, and explains a little bit about what next steps are and some contact information in case either of them have any questions. Anything you want to add?
I do want to continue to talk about wins here. It's a theme for me right now. The other thing that Workday allows us to do is now that Joey has made that intermittent FML request, you'll see if you can go back to the absence calendar, we'll see that the intermittent FML request is approved. We'll see the approval on the absence calendar. As you all know, intermittent is intermittent. And so Joey might be needing to take time next week for his illness or injury, or the week after. You'll be able to see that leave request. That leave has nothing to do with pay. That's an important construct. Leaves and time offs. Leaves have no pay effect in regards, I shouldn't say that, in regard to paying Joey. What it's going to show you is that his leave is approved, and when Joey needs to go make a request for an intermittent FML day for 1 day or 2 days, he'll be able to go into his time offs and select that 1 day or 2 day time off under that leave. Joey's not going to have availability to even see that intermittent FML time off unless he has an intermittent leave approval. So like today, where somebody can maybe go into e-leave or request an absence on paper and request that intermittent approval, employees are not going to be able to see the intermittent time off unless they have an approved leave. We're running out of time. And so I want to point out a couple other things. There are other leaves that are going to show here in real time. When somebody has a short-term disability leave and they're being paid by our disability vendor, that connection happens, and employees are going to see that leave and see the days that they're going to be paid in real time on their absence calendar. Same thing with workers' comp, although not quite as automated. When somebody is receiving workers' compensation pay from workers' compensation, they'll be able to see those days that they're going to be receiving that pay on their absence calendar. We hope that it'll help with a lot of overpayments, but the visibility is key here. The other thing is that managers and supervisors will have a report on a dashboard available to them so they can see all of their employees on leave, when their employees are expected to return. Some supervisors and managers in the room or online today may receive a weekly report from the FML gang that tells them the same thing. Now that report's going to be available to them in real time at any time that they need it. All right, we're at time. We're over time. So are you coming back up, or are we bringing Lisa and Robin up too? Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Dave and Crystal. So next up, I'd like to invite Robin and Lisa up to the podium, and they're going to do a demonstration on an expense report. So, welcome, Lisa and Robin. Thanks. All right. This is just very awkward. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Plaga, and this is Robin Gasson. I'll do a little intro. Yeah, we have some fans in the back. I'll do a little intro while Robin is getting set up. What we're going to demo for you today is the expense report process. And what that effectively replaces today in your world could be a multitude of ways to submit travel, expense reports, and P-cards. And I think that is the first benefit I want to do a shout out to, is this replaces the multitude of ways you may do it today. And this one stop replaces the paper forms, the e-travel, e-request. Some people do it in PeopleSoft. One little dot.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. That's one of our big wins, definitely coming away from this process. So as you can see, we're in the system right now as Rachel Green, and she has just had to do some overtime work because Joey's been on FML, and now he's taking PT. So she is really looking forward to next week's Workday Rising conference. So she's really excited about that. So she's going to start the process of getting her travel approved so that she can get out of town. And hopefully Joey will man the fort while she's gone. So in the instance of time, in the matter of time, just to make sure we get through some of the important parts of this, I have already created what we call a spend authorization for Rachel to go on this trip. And as I'm showing you the spend authorization, I'm hoping that Lisa can help me point out some of the similarities that you might see that are currently we're capturing in our travel system today. So I'm going to go ahead, as Crystal said, just type in a few letters, and that is helping to search for the tasks that you need to perform in Workday. So I'm just going to start with the spend authorization. And as you can see here, when you pull up spend authorizations, it's giving me the option to create one. It's also giving me a report that would show my last 5 spend authorizations. So maybe I have a multitude of trips coming up and I want to make sure that I have something created for those. But for what I'm going to be looking at today, I'm going to be clicking on my spend authorizations. Wait for it to churn here. As you can see here, I have one created. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And I'm going to bring up the actual spend authorization here. It would help if I used the mouse instead of my fingers. And to give you a little bit of a look and feel of how that will be in the future state. So in looking at the spend authorization, the first thing I wanted to draw your attention to was the header information. And this is where we're putting in the dates of the travel, the description, I'm going to a conference, and the business purpose. I do want to point out that in the future state, business purpose, we're treating it a little bit differently in Workday. Business purpose will actually be something you select from a drop-down menu, and where we're looking for more of that why, what, who, et cetera, justification that we look for today in a business purpose, we're asking for those to be completed in this area which we call justification.
And I think from a benefit perspective, what that really leads towards is getting the data that Mike Hoffer talked about from an analytic perspective. Right now, a lot of our systems are just free-form text, which makes data extremely hard to mine, extremely hard to find. So it's really hard to do that looking forward analysis.
Correct. So if we just look down to the body of the spend authorization, you can see to the left hand to this navigation bar here, I have gone ahead and entered in what I think are estimated expenses that I'm going to be either expected to be prepaid on my behalf or be reimbursed at the completion of my trip. So the first thing I put in was ground transportation. I'm anticipating a couple of Uber rides to and from the airport to the conference center. I know I will have conference registration that'll be required, and I'm following the university's requirement to use
our travel agency to book my prepaid airfare. So these are all expenses that I want my manager to be aware of so that they can approve this travel going forward. And I will point out that in the future, we do have some policy changes with regard to the requirement for spend authorization that I'll let Lisa just kind of, well, okay, I can speak to those. I'm just looking for reassurance here. So in the future, we know that today it's very difficult for us to know where all of our folks are at because we don't have a requirement for them to have a pre-approved travel in the system. So moving forward with Workday, we are asking anyone who is going on travel status that they do get a spend authorization approved prior to that trip. That spend authorization is going to do several things for us. It's going to help us fulfill our duty of care so that we can be able to run reports to see where people are at any given point in the time, especially if you are trying to track folks from your organization that might be traveling abroad, and just to be able to put your hands on where people are at during times of crisis. So this spend authorization has already gone through the approval process. As Crystal was mentioning, we have Workday is a very transparent system, and at any given point in time, an individual can see where their transaction is at in the process and who the next person is up to do that approval or that review step. So if we just click on the process history here, you can see that Rachel has submitted her spend authorization. It has gone to her cost center manager for approval. Cost center managers will be approving for the budget aspects of the travel, where the money is coming from to pay for the trip, as well as some cursory compliance review as well. Also, too, what's happening is Rachel's supervisor is going to be getting a notification. And that's just letting her supervisor know that she is planning on going on a trip and give them an opportunity if something needs to be changed or stopped at that point that they can respond. And then it's going through the process. We do have a department leader here. We are bringing department leaders into our travel approval. And then at the very, very end, after it's gone through all of the approvals, we do have a step for our service center representatives to do a cursory review of the travel to make sure it's still in compliance and to help facilitate any prepayments if they're needed. Okay. So that's it for the spend authorization. So we are going to leap ahead to the future. And now Rachel has gone to the conference and she has come back, and now she is going to do her expense report. And again, that's a task in Workday. So she has a couple of options here. As Lisa was saying, the expense report is going to be used for a couple different things. It's going to be for reimbursing our travel expenses. It's going to be for reallocating and approving P-card transactions and reimbursing individuals.
And I think a real win here is that you don't have to submit each transaction separately. You can enlist all of your expense report, all of your expense items for the week in one form. Whereas today you may have to submit multiple forms in multiple different ways.
And what I'm going to show you here with this expense report is I'm going to do this based off of that spend authorization. So I'm going to click the radio button here, create expense report from spend authorization. I'm going to use the drop down that's going to show me what's available for me to expense on. I'm going to click this conference. And note when I click on that spend authorization, it's going to pre-populate some of the header information that I had already entered. The other thing I want to point out is, in this example, Rachel is also a P-card manager and has a P-card assigned to her. And if what should show are any of her open P-card transactions that still are left to be expensed. That's what we would see down here at the bottom. It would give her an opportunity to review those to see if any pertained or need to be applied to the expense report for this trip. And so she's looking down, Panera and Donato's, those weren't part of her trip, so she's going to go ahead and create her spend lines. And Bonnie, you'll have to nudge me a little bit here if I'm getting in the way of the next part here. I'm going to just say, I'm just going to show one spend line. So we've determined that the airfare was prepaid, and also too that the registration was prepaid on a P card. So really her only expense to be reimbursed are those Uber charges. So she's going to go ahead and add a new expense item here. And again, we've built a lot of really great smart search into Workday. And so she's just going to say Uber and hit enter. And it's going to populate to the correct spend item that she needs to select for that, which is ground transportation. And she's going to put the total amount to be reimbursed, $50. And a memo line if she wanted to add any additional information. We do ask for a business reason, to and from airport. And the merchant was Uber. And with expenses, we do require that a itemized receipt is attached. And the system will give you a little bit of a nudge if that is not included. And that's it for the expense report. Okay, great, thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Lisa. All right. So I'm back to talk with you all a little bit about training. I'm excited to see that there were so many questions in the little app around training. So hopefully I'll answer many of those questions today. And for those that I don't get to, what we'll do is we'll publish an FAQ after this session so that way we make sure we get to all of your questions. All right. So let me pull up my slides here. Okay. All right. So great. So a couple things I want to make sure that I cover with you all today is, one, we've received a lot of questions around what training methods will the enterprise project be using. And so what this is showing here is our three main methods that we're going to be leveraging for the project. The first one you'll see in the center is formal training. This is training such as instructor-led training, virtual instructor-led training, and e-learning. And this type of training will be targeted mainly at what we call our core users. Our core users are those individuals who work in HR, payroll, finance, and supply chain roles who will be using the system on a very frequent basis in order to do their job. The next set of methods that we'll be leveraging are what we call social learning. And so social learning is really, what that really says is engaging with other people to learn. So that's whether that's engaging in support labs, working with super users or your change coordinators to get your questions answered, or engaging in knowledge transfer. And one thing I want to share a little bit about knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer is a type of method that we use if there are individuals, just a couple, that are getting ready to take on a new function in the system. The last piece is performance support. And performance support, this is what we really refer to as our on-demand set of tools. These are our job aids, our short videos, our access to our training tenant, help text and guided tours in the system. So these are types of things that you can expect being released over the next few months. So let's talk a little bit about timeline. We've gotten a lot of questions about timeline. So right now, if you go out to our enterprise project website, we actually have several pieces of information out there and several sessions already available for you to start learning if you're curious. We have a Workday 101 that's already published, a Reporting 101 that's already out there, as well as what we call our core concept sessions. And our core concept sessions are about an hour long, up to 90 minutes, and they go over various topics such as supervisory orgs, living in live data, and security roles. So if you're curious, I highly encourage you to go out to our website and check those out. So as we move forward in our timeline, we'll have our training registration open in March. And during that time, we'll have our course catalog available so that way you'll be able to see what courses are available. We also want to point out here that in March, all users should be preparing to complete their security training, which is in Buckeye Learn. It comes up every year, so you want to make sure you'll get that out of the way before you start your Workday training. So starting in April, this is when we will release all of our other training. You'll have access to our on-demand training pieces, as I just mentioned, those videos, those job aids, those other components to really introduce you to pieces of the system. Then we'll also launch our instructor-led training for those core users once again. And then finally, we'll have our support labs stood up for those of you that want to get in with some of those questions, you want to get into a training environment, you want to practice before go live. And those labs will also be available after go live, so that way, if you're in the system and you have a couple of questions, you can walk in and get the help you need. So let's take a look at what does this look like for faculty, staff, and managers, because these are probably our largest groups that will need training in the system. So for faculty and staff, they'll have a 15-minute e-learning on navigating in Workday. And so this is really how to get around in the system, how to access the payslip, how to access your personal profile, how to make changes. For those who are frequent travelers, you'll have access to a video series on how to do what Robin and Lisa just showed you in terms of creating a spend authorization and how to do an expense report. Our principal investigators, we know that's a very large group. There'll be sessions on managing grants in Workday, how to access the PI portal that was spoken about earlier. So that'll be about a 30-minute webinar and about 1 to 3 hours of training as well as support labs. Those that make purchases in Workday, there'll be a purchasing process in Workday webinar that's 1 hour long. And then there'll be access to over 30 individual items to provide you on-demand support. Our managers, I saw a question about this in our app as well. Our managers will also have special training. Not only will they have access to all the training items for faculty and staff, but they'll also have access to special manager training as well. Managers will have 5 hours of instructional-led training or e-learning, which includes items such as managing your team in Workday, how to hire, managing your team, maintaining your team, separations, and for those in the medical center for which this is applicable, position control. Managers will have access to over 50 on-demand components to be able to provide that extra level of training. So once again, please go to our website. We'll start to have more information out there for you to access, but I just want to give you a flavor of what's to come. So with that, I want to go ahead and invite our ESG and Natalie and Mike back up to the stage because we have a few minutes for some Q&A. Okay. Okay. So I'm looking at my phone. I'm not checking Facebook here. What I am doing is I am looking at the questions that you all submitted. And I'm going to kind of start at the top and work my way down. Many of the questions at the top were related to training, so hopefully I was able to knock those out. But the first question is, how can we get involved in end-to-end testing? So Mike, maybe that's a question for you. Mike A.
Yep.
Yes,
No
sorry.
problem.
There's with half of the panel being Mikes, it's a little bit tricky. Yes.
So end-to-end testing. Well, I would say expect some interaction with your business partners or business advocates shortly. That'll come through requests through the business process committees to identify SMEs to participate. As I mentioned earlier, mainly that'll be in cycle 2 of our end-to-end testing, so a little bit further out in the timeline after we build the next tenant. So we're going to squash those bugs we talked about earlier and then invite people in to participate.
Great. Thanks, Mike. This next question is for Mike P. This is a question actually about the budget of the project. There's a question, is the budget of this project public knowledge for OSU employees? If so, where can it be found?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that we've ever publicly shared it. I know we talk about it quite consistently at the board level, and we typically do it in executive session just to, again, have a pretty frank conversation. Again, I'll give you a sense for the budget over 7 years is just north of $200 million in total over a 7-year time period. And so I'm happy to answer more questions about it if folks have it, but that's to give you a general sense of where it is.
Great. Thank you. Okay. This next question, I believe we'll start off with Beth. What are some of the reasons for the delay in the Workday student implementation?
Sure. So Workday was working really closely with our team throughout in the development, and early on there was a implementation timeline developed, and over the summer we had the opportunity, our team had the opportunity to really look closely and work closely with Workday to understand whether we were comfortable with their projected timeline and product development. And we just felt that it didn't align with what our expectations were at the time. And so felt that taking a pause to allow us to evaluate the situation and the timeline was the best decision at that time.
I could add to that too. I think one of the things that we knew going into our partnership with Workday was that HR was a very established product, and they'd been delivering it at numerous higher ed institutions and numerous companies throughout the world. And finance was quickly gaining traction behind that, and student was not. To this day, they only have one customer on student, and we knew that, and that was a risk that we willingly took because we believe in the platform and we believe in the efficiencies that we could gain all being on one system. And Workday approached us to be a design partner with them. And Bruce always talks about leading and leading at the national level, and this gave us the opportunity to work with Workday to lead and help design that product and to ensure that we got a product that was going to meet our needs at a very complex, R1 institution. And so we knew some of these risks going in, and I think as we got to the earlier go live schedule, it was clear that Workday had a plan to meet all of our blocker gaps, but those blocker gaps weren't going to be met on that current timeline. And so I think that's a really clear point too. Workday has a plan to meet all our blocker gaps. They're there, right? And so there's no this thing's missing or this thing's not going to be in the product. It's just not there on the original timeline that we were looking for.
Great, thank you. So I think this might have to be our last question because I know that we're running short on time, but this question is for Susan. Susan, can you talk a little bit about how the HR service delivery pilot is going and what are some of the lessons learned from that so far?
Great. So as I mentioned in my earlier comments, the pilot kicked off in July. And as many of you know, currently at Ohio State, we're operating 11 different shared service centers. And each of those shared service centers, while delivering a relatively high quality of service to our employees, it's very inconsistent. And I would submit that, most of our employees would not say that they're having an exceptional employee experience. So what our pilot is doing is really looking at all of the business processes, their testing processes. We're testing a very new work environment. We would love to have folks come over and take a look at it. It's a very open, very collaborative work environment. We're assessing the engagement of our team to make sure that folks are having a good experience as our employees. As I mentioned, a big part of the pilot was bringing Student Life HR into Gateway, their shared service center. And so we had the very fortunate opportunity to be able to pilot very early on what student employment would look like. And so really getting a sense of hiring of students, very large volumes of students, and wanting to make sure that we weren't diminishing their experience and actually enhancing their experience. And I think what we learned from the pilot, as you saw, I seriously doubt that we'll ever have a 96% approval rating ever again. But we certainly have had that based on the feedback that we've received so far.
Great. Okay, well, thank you all. Appreciate your taking the time to answer the questions. So with that, we're actually at time. I know time just flies. Anyways, but I just want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to encourage, for those of you who aren't yet subscribed, please go to our website, subscribe to our newsletter. We have a link here. And then if you have any other further questions, please feel free to contact us on the website. I have seen some questions. Will the slides be available? Yes, they will. We'll make sure that these are available to you all, and then we will also get to answering these other questions that came in. Once again, thank you all so much for your time today. Thank you to those of you that tuned in, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.